Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into something that's probably sitting in your pocket, on your TV stand, or in your gaming setup right now. We're talking about Sony, and I know what you're thinking. Another video about a tech company? But trust me, Sony's story is different. This is a company that went from making rice cookers in post-war Japan to creating the PlayStation, the Walkman, and some of the most iconic cameras and TVs on the planet. But here's the thing. Sony has had some incredible highs and some dramatic lows. They've dominated industries, lost billions, and somehow managed to come back stronger. So stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll see Sony in a completely different light. And hey, if you enjoy this deep dive into tech history and innovation, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We're building a community of people who love understanding the why behind the tech we use every day. All right, let's get into it. Sony's origin story starts in 1946, right after World War II, when Japan was in ruins. Two men, Masaru Ibuka and Akio Morita, decided to start an electronics company in a bombed-out department store in Tokyo. They called it Tokyo Tsushin Kogyo, which thankfully they later shortened to Sony. Their first products? Electric rice cookers that didn't really work and heated cushions. Not exactly the PlayStation 5, right? But Ibuka and Morita had vision. They wanted to create products that were innovative, not just copies of what already existed. Their first breakthrough came in 1950 when they created Japan's first tape recorder. But the real game changer was in 1955, the TR-55 transistor radio. This was Japan's first commercially produced transistor radio, and it put Sony on the map. But here's where it gets interesting. Morita looked at the American market and saw an opportunity. He wanted to sell these radios in the US, but American retailers wanted to put their own brand names on the products. Morita refused. He insisted that the Sony name would be on every product, even though Sony was completely unknown in America. That decision changed everything. Morita understood something crucial. Brand identity matters. He knew that if Sony was going to compete globally, people needed to recognize and trust the Sony name. And he was right. By the 1960s, Sony wasn't just making radios. They were making TVs, and they were making them smaller and better than anyone else. The first Sony TV sold in the US was a tiny 8-inch screen, but it was a hit because it was portable and reliable. The 1970s and 80s were Sony's golden era, and it all started with one revolutionary product, the Walkman. Picture this. It's 1979, and if you want to listen to music on the go, you're carrying around a huge boombox on your shoulder. Then Sony launches the Walkman, and suddenly you've got your entire music collection in your pocket with headphones. It was mind-blowing. The Walkman sold over 400 million units and completely changed how we consume music. It created the concept of personal audio. Before the iPod, before Spotify, there was the Walkman. But Sony wasn't done. In the 1980s, they were everywhere. They developed the 3.5-inch floppy disk standard with IBM. They created the Betamax video format, which, yes, lost to VHS, but we'll get to that. They were pushing the boundaries in professional video equipment. And then came 1994, the year Sony changed gaming forever. The PlayStation. Nintendo had famously backed out of a deal with Sony to create a CD-based gaming system. Bad move. Sony said, "Fine, we'll do it ourselves." And the PlayStation was born. It destroyed the competition, selling over 100 million units and making gaming cool for adults, not just kids. The PS2 followed in 2000 and became the best-selling console of all time, with over 155 million units sold. Sony wasn't just in your living room with a TV anymore. They owned gaming too. This was peak Sony. They had the Walkman, the PlayStation, Trinitron TVs that were the gold standard, professional cameras, and even a movie studio after buying Columbia Pictures. Sony was untouchable, but then something happened. Sony got comfortable. While Sony was perfecting the Walkman with mini-disc players, a company called Apple launched the iPod in 2001. Sony, the company that invented personal audio, completely missed the digital music revolution. Why? Because Sony's music division was terrified of piracy. They were so focused on protecting copyrights that they refused to make it easy for people to transfer their music digitally. Meanwhile, Apple made it dead simple with iTunes. Game over. The 2000s were brutal for Sony. Their TVs, once the best in the world, were being undercut by cheaper Samsung and LG models. Their cameras faced intense competition from Canon and Nikon. Their phones? Forgotten after the iPhone launched in 2007. The PlayStation 3, launched in 2006, was a disaster at first. It cost $599, way too expensive, and was incredibly difficult for developers to work with. Microsoft's Xbox 360 was cheaper and easier to develop for. Sony lost billions on the PS3. Then came one of the biggest corporate security breaches in history. In 2011, hackers attacked the PlayStation network, compromising 77 million accounts. Sony had to shut down PSN for 23 days. The damage to Sony's reputation was massive, and the breach cost them $171 million. By 2012, Sony reported a $6.4 billion annual loss, one of the biggest in Japanese corporate history. The company that had revolutionized consumer electronics was now struggling to survive. Analysts were questioning if Sony should split up or sell off divisions. It looked like Sony's best days were behind them. But here's where the story gets good again. Sony made some hard choices. They sold off their PC division. They sold their battery business. They refocused on what they did best: gaming, cameras, sensors, and entertainment. And the PlayStation 4, launched in 2013, was everything the PS3 wasn't. It was affordable at $399, easy to develop for, and Sony learned from Microsoft's mistakes with the Xbox One. The PS4 crushed it, selling over 117 million units. But the real genius move? Image sensors. Those tiny chips that capture images in cameras. Sony quietly became the dominant player in this market, and now their sensors are in almost every smartphone, including iPhones. Apple might not use Sony's brand, but they're using Sony's technology. Sony's camera division also made a comeback. Their mirrorless alpha cameras, especially the A7 series, revolutionized professional photography. They're lighter than traditional DSLRs, but just as powerful. Today, Sony is a leader in the mirrorless camera market. And then there's the PlayStation 5. Despite launching during a pandemic with massive supply chain issues, the PS5 has been a huge success. Sony has also expanded into services with PlayStation Plus and is investing heavily in live service games. In 2023, Sony reported record profits. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. Their Spider-Man movies are box office gold. Their TVs are premium again, with OLED and high-end LCD technology. Their headphones and earbuds compete directly with Apple and Bose. So what's the lesson from Sony's story? Innovation isn't enough. Sony invented personal audio but lost to Apple. They had the best TVs but got complacent. Success requires constant adaptation, humility, and the willingness to make tough choices. But the Sony story also shows that you can come back. When companies focus on their strengths, listen to customers, and aren't afraid to change, they can reinvent themselves. Today's Sony is leaner, smarter, and more focused. They're not trying to do everything. They're doing what they do best, and they're doing it brilliantly. Looking ahead, Sony is betting big on entertainment. Gaming, movies, music, and the technology that powers all of it. With the image sensor business growing and PlayStation continuing to dominate, Sony's future looks bright. Now here's my question for you. What's your favorite Sony product of all time? The Walkman? The PS2? An Alpha camera? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your Sony story. And if you made it this far, you're clearly interested in the stories behind the tech we use. That's exactly what this channel is about. We break down the companies, the innovations, and the drama that shapes our digital world. So do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now. Ring the notification bell so you never miss a video. We've got deep dives coming on Nintendo, Apple's rivalry with Microsoft, and the rise of Chinese tech companies that are shaking up the industry. Also, give this video a thumbs up if you learned something new about Sony. It helps the algorithm show this video to more people who'd appreciate this kind of content. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay curious.